The conference hall on Concordia Prime stretched wide enough to hold representatives from 47 different species. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human delegation seat, a simple chair designed for his species' basic physiology. Around him, the other ambassadors occupied seats that ranged from water tanks to gravity suspension fields. Some delegates didn't even have recognizable bodies. Chen had been doing this job for 3 standard cycles now, 3 years of careful diplomacy, of learning which species found eye contact aggressive and which found it respectful. 3 years of humanity trying to prove they belonged in this ancient gathering of civilizations. The Vrin Collective's representative, Counselor Thexal, approached Chen during the pre-session mingling. Thexal's crystalline body refracted the station's artificial light into rainbow patterns across the floor. Ambassador Chen, "A pleasant morning to you," Thexal said through his translation device. "And to you, Counselor," Chen replied with a slight bow. "I wanted to discuss the mining rights dispute between our species in the Gamma sector. I believe we can reach an equitable arrangement." Chen smiled. "I'm sure we can. Humans prefer cooperation over conflict." Thexal's crystalline structure pulsed with what Chen had learned to recognize as pleasure. "This is why your species integrates well into our council. You understand that civilization means moving beyond primitive aggression." Before Chen could respond, a harsh voice echoed through the chamber. "The Krell Dominion demands immediate attention." Every conversation stopped. The Krell ambassador, Supreme Commander Vrax, stood at the central podium. The Krell were large creatures nearly 3 meters tall, with armored exoskeletons and multiple limbs. Their species had been council members for over 2,000 years. Vrax's 4 eyes fixed on Chen. "The Krell Dominion hereby serves formal notice to the human delegation. The colony world you call New Prosperity exists within territory historically claimed by the Dominion. You have 72 standard hours to evacuate all human presence from this world. Failure to comply will result in corrective military action." The chamber erupted in whispered conversations. Chen stood slowly, his face calm. "Supreme Commander, New Prosperity was legally claimed under Council exploration protocols. We followed every regulation. The planet was uninhabited and unclaimed for 3,000 years. Vrax's mandibles clicked together in a sound that translators rendered as laughter. "The Krell Dominion does not recognize human claims to territory within our historical sphere. 72 hours, human. Remove your colonists or we will remove them for you." The Council's High Mediator, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council 6 millennia ago, floated forward. "Supreme Commander, perhaps mediation would be more appropriate than threats." "The Krell do not require mediation. We are informing the Council of our intentions as protocol requires. The humans may leave peacefully or they may be removed by force. The choice is theirs." Chen remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "Supreme Commander Vrax, you are declaring war on humanity?" More clicking laughter. "War? No, Ambassador. This is a minor police action, a correction of an administrative error. Your species is young, inexperienced. You will learn that junior members do not challenge senior powers." "So to be clear," Chen said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "you are threatening military force against human citizens on a legally established colony world." "If they refuse to leave, yes. This is the Krell way. We have fought 217 wars, Ambassador Chen. We have never lost. Not once in 3,000 years. I suggest you consult your superiors and convince them to see reason." Chen was quiet for a long moment. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the chamber focused on him. Finally he nodded. "Very well, Supreme Commander. I request the traditional 72-hour deliberation period to consult with my government." Vrax's posture conveyed satisfaction. "Granted. Use this time wisely, human. Avoid unnecessary bloodshed." The session ended shortly after. As delegates filed out, Thexal approached Chen again. "Ambassador, please tell me your government will see reason. The Krell are formidable. They have the largest military fleet in 3 sectors. Fighting them would be catastrophic for your young species." Chen looked at his friend. "Counselor, how do Krell wars typically proceed?" Thexal's structure shifted, a gesture of uncertainty. "Well, there is usually an exchange of long-range fire, some skirmishing, negotiations, territorial concessions. Casualties are typically minimal. The Krell are aggressive, but they follow the rules of civilized warfare. Both sides exchange blows, demonstrate resolve, then negotiate a settlement. This is how all council wars function. And if a species refuses to negotiate, that rarely happens. The Krell are intimidating enough that most species yield after the first engagement. Those who don't typically lose 3 or 4 ships, then surrender. The Krell are merciful in victory, usually demanding only resource rights or minor territorial adjustments. It's all very regulated. Chen nodded slowly. I see, thank you, Counselor. That's very helpful information. Over the next 72 hours, Chen remained in his quarters, receiving encrypted communications from Earth and the colonial administration. Other ambassadors tried to visit, offering advice, mediation services, even sanctuary for human colonists fleeing New Prosperity. Chen politely declined all offers. On the 3rd day, Chen returned to the council chamber. Every seat was filled. Everyone wanted to witness humanity's inevitable capitulation. Chen approached the central podium. Supreme Commander Vrack stood opposite him, looking pleased. Ambassador Chen, I trust you bring word of your government's wise decision to evacuate. Chen looked directly at the Krell commander. Supreme Commander Vrax, I bring word from the United Earth Government and the Colonial Administration. We have considered your ultimatum carefully, and we decline. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds from dozens of species. Vrax's mandibles opened wide. You refuse? Yes, New Prosperity is a legal human colony. We will not abandon our citizens to threats and intimidation. Vrax's posture shifted to an aggressive stance. Then you force our hand. The Krell 7th Battle Fleet will arrive at New Prosperity in 4 standard days. They will remove your presence by force. Chen's expression didn't change. Supreme Commander, I must inform you that by threatening military action and following through on that threat, you are declaring war on humanity. Is that your final decision? War? Vrax seemed almost amused. You flatter yourself, Ambassador. This is a police action, nothing more. Your small colonial defense force will be swept aside. You will lose perhaps 3 ships, a few hundred casualties. Then you will negotiate surrender like sensible beings. This is how these matters are settled, I see. Then let me be absolutely clear. Chen's voice grew cold. The United Earth Government accepts your declaration of war. We will defend New Prosperity with all available force. And Supreme Commander, yes, may your gods have mercy on you. Because we won't. The chamber fell silent. Even the translation devices seemed to hesitate before rendering Chen's words. Vrax stared at the human ambassador. You don't understand what you're doing. The Krell Dominion has never lost a war. Chen turned to leave, then paused. Neither has humanity, Supreme Commander. The difference is, we've fought our wars against ourselves. We know what real war looks like. You're about to learn. As Chen walked out, Counselor Thexal rushed after him. Ambassador, please reconsider. You don't understand. Galactic warfare isn't like whatever barbaric conflicts your species engaged in during your pre-spaceflight era. There are rules, conventions. You can't possibly win against the Krell. Chen stopped and looked at his friend with something resembling sadness. Counselor, I hope you're right. I hope this will be a minor skirmish with few casualties and a quick negotiation. But I need you to understand something. What? Humanity doesn't know how to fight small wars. We never learned. When we fight to ensure our enemy can never threaten us again. If the Krell come to New Prosperity looking for a police action, they're going to find something very different. Chen continued walking, leaving Thexal standing in the corridor, his crystalline structure flickering with the closest thing his species had to fear. 4 days remained until the Krell 7th Battle Fleet would arrive at New Prosperity. 4 days until the Galactic Council would learn what human warfare actually meant. 4 days until everything changed. The Krell 7th Battle Fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly on schedule. 300 warships arranged themselves in the traditional battle formation that had intimidated species for millennia. Each ship bristled with weapons designed for the ritualized warfare that had governed galactic conflicts for thousands of years. Supreme Commander Vrax observed the approaching planet from his flagship's bridge. New Prosperity hung in space like a blue and green jewel, peaceful and vulnerable. Tactical analysis, Vrax ordered. His tactical officer studied the screens. We detect 40 human vessels in defensive orbit around the planet. Surface scans show the colony has been evacuated. No civilian life signs detected. Vrax's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Smart, they removed their civilians. They're learning. Orders, Supreme Commander. Standard engagement protocol. Open fire at maximum range. Disable their shields and propulsion systems. We'll leave them enough functionality to transmit their surrender. This should take perhaps 2 hours. The tactical officer hesitated. Commander, the human ships aren't broadcasting the standard pre-battle protocols. They're not signaling their intent to negotiate after the first exchange. They're inexperienced. They probably don't know the proper procedures. It doesn't matter. Begin the engagement. The Krell fleet opened fire. Brilliant lances of energy crossed the distance between the two forces. The human ship's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. Then something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't return fire at range. Instead, they accelerated. Directly toward the Krell fleet. What are they doing? Vrax demanded. This isn't proper formation. They're supposed to maintain distance and exchange fire. The tactical officer's voice rose in pitch. Commander, they're launching kinetic projectiles. Thousands of them. Velocity readings are. That's impossible. Those projectiles are traveling at significant fractions of light speed. Evasive action, Vrax ordered. But the Krell ships, designed for stately long-range engagements, couldn't maneuver quickly enough. The first kinetic weapons struck with devastating force. When objects traveling at a significant fraction of light speed hit matter, the result wasn't just damage. It was annihilation. A Krell heavy cruiser simply ceased to exist, converted to expanding plasma and debris in a microsecond, then another, then 5 more. Return fire. All weapons! Vrax was standing now, his calm shattered. The Krell fleet poured fire into the approaching human vessels. But the humans weren't fighting like any species the Krell had encountered. They deployed countermeasures that seemed to predict exactly where shots would be. They jinked and weaved with acceleration that should have turned their crews to paste. And they kept firing. Commander, their weapons aren't designed to disable, the tactical officer reported, his voice edged with panic. They're designed to destroy completely. They're not targeting our shields or weapon systems. They're punching through our hulls and detonating our reactors. A human ship exploded as concentrated Krell fire finally overwhelmed its defenses. Vrax felt a moment of satisfaction. Then 12 more Krell ships vanished from his tactical display. How many have we lost? Vrax demanded. 97 ships destroyed, 23 more with critical damage. Commander, we need to withdraw and regroup. The Krell do not withdraw from junior species. Commander, they're deploying something new. Swarm weapons. Missiles that are. They're thinking. They're coordinating. They're adapting to our point defense. We can't stop them all. The bridge shook as a near miss rattled the flagship. Vrax watched in growing horror as his fleet, the fleet that had conquered 6 star systems, was being systematically destroyed. The human ships weren't just fighting. They were hunting. They moved through the Krell formation like predators, their weapons fire precise and lethal. When Krell ships tried to surrender, broadcasting the standard yield protocols, the humans ignored them and kept firing. They're not accepting surrenders, the communications officer shouted. They're just destroying everything. Vrax realized with crystallizing horror that the humans didn't understand the rules, or worse, they didn't care. All ships, emergency hyperspace jump, random vectors. Scatter and regroup at Rally Point Gamma. Commander, that's a retreat. The Krell have never retreated. Execute the order. The surviving Krell ships, less than a quarter of the original fleet, made desperate jumps to hyperspace. Many didn't make it. Human weapons tracked them and destroyed them even as their drives spun up. When the last Krell ship vanished, the battle had lasted exactly 17 minutes. The space around New Prosperity was filled with debris and the fading energy signatures of destroyed vessels. Aboard the human flagship, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo watched the tactical display clear. Casualty report, she said quietly. 2 ships destroyed, Commander. 3 with moderate damage. Total casualties, 87 dead, 134 wounded. Okonkwo closed her eyes briefly. Each number was a person, a name, a family that would grieve. But she'd expected far worse. Secure the area. Rescue any surviving Krell crew from the debris. Treat their wounded. Her executive officer looked surprised. Admiral, they came here to conquer us. And now they're survivors in space. We're not monsters, Commander. We fight hard, but we don't murder the helpless. Across the galaxy on Concordia Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle recordings in absolute silence. The High Mediator finally spoke, his ancient voice trembling. What did we just witness? Counselor Thexal's crystalline structure flickered rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. That wasn't war. That wasn't the ritualized combat we've practiced for millennia. That was extermination. They destroyed 90% of the Krell fleet in 17 minutes, another counselor said. The Krell, the species that has dominated military power for 3,000 years. They didn't offer surrender terms, Thexol continued. They didn't try to disable ships. They just destroyed them. Efficiently. Completely. The chamber's doors opened. Ambassador Chen Wei entered, his expression neutral. The human delegation requests time to address the council regarding the Krell incident. Incident? Supreme Counselor Madara, of the ancient founder species, leaned forward. Ambassador, you just annihilated a fleet. Not defeated. Not repelled. Annihilated. Chen walked to the central podium. The Krell declared war on humanity. They came to our colony world with 300 warships intending to remove our citizens by force. We defended ourselves. But the level of violence, Thexol protested. You didn't give them a chance to withdraw. You didn't negotiate during the battle. You just kept destroying them. Chen looked at his friend. Counselor, you explained to me how galactic warfare works. Long-range exchanges. Minimal casualties. Negotiated settlements. That's not warfare. That's theater. Then what do you call what we just witnessed? Defense. Supreme Commander Vrax came to New Prosperity with overwhelming force, intending to intimidate us into surrender. We showed him that humans can't be intimidated. Another counselor spoke up. But you could have stopped. After destroying half their fleet, they would have negotiated. You could have achieved a diplomatic solution. Could we? Chen asked quietly. Or would they have withdrawn, regrouped, and come back with a larger fleet? Counselor, let me explain something about human history and human warfare. The council waited. Humanity has fought over 14,000 recorded wars. We've developed weapons capable of destroying our entire planet multiple times over. We've nearly made ourselves extinct at least 3 times. We know what war costs. We know what it destroys. And because we know these things, we don't take war lightly. Then why such violence? Thexol asked. Because we learned a hard lesson over thousands of years of conflict. When you fight to win completely. You fight to ensure your enemy cannot and will not threaten you again. Half measures just ensure you'll have to fight again later. But you're talking about total war, the High Mediator said. The complete destruction of an enemy's capacity to resist. Yes, that's barbaric. Chen's expression hardened. The Krell came to take our colony by force. They threatened 8 million human lives. Was that civilized? Should we have followed your rules and allowed them to kill a few hundred of our people, destroy a few of our ships, then negotiated away our rights to our own world? How is that justice? The council had no answer. Chen continued. I told Supreme Commander Vrax that humanity has never lost a war. That's true. It's true because when we fight, we commit completely. We use every advantage, every weapon, every tactic. We don't fight to make a point or to adjust territorial boundaries. We fight to survive, and we're very, very good at it. What happens now? Madara asked. Will you pursue the surviving Krell ships? No, they retreated. The immediate threat is over, but I need this council to understand something clearly. What? Humanity came to the stars seeking peace, knowledge, friendship. We still want those things, but we will not be victims. Any species that threatens human lives will face the full force of human military power. And I promise you, counselors, you don't want to see what that looks like when we're not showing restraint. Restraint? Thexol's structure flickered. You call that restraint? Yes, we didn't pursue the fleeing ships. We're treating their wounded. We're offering humanitarian assistance. In human history, that counts as restrained. The Krell Dominion's response came within 3 standard days. Not negotiation, not diplomacy. Mobilization. Every Krell warship across 20 star systems received the same order. Converge on the home system. Prepare for full-scale war. The Krell Supreme Council, humiliated by the defeat at New Prosperity, decided that humanity needed to be taught a lesson that would echo through the centuries. 2,000 warships. The largest fleet the Krell had assembled in 800 years. They called it the Extinction Fleet, a name meant to convey absolute finality. The Galactic Council watched this development with growing alarm. Counselor Thexol accessed the public human network, trying to understand what his new friends were thinking. Were they preparing to negotiate? To apologize? To seek council protection? What he found instead chilled his crystalline structure to its core. The human military wasn't mobilizing defensively. They were advancing. The entire human fleet, nearly 200 warships, had left defensive positions around Earth and the colonies. They were heading directly toward Krell, Space.Thexol immediately requested an emergency meeting with Ambassador Chen. They met in Chen's quarters on Concordia Prime. The ambassador was reviewing tactical displays when Thexol arrived. Ambassador, please tell me those reports are wrong. Please tell me humanity isn't sending its fleet directly into Krell territory. Chen looked up from his displays. The reports are accurate, Counselor. But that's suicide. The Krell have assembled 2,000 ships. You have 200. The mathematics alone doom you. Perhaps. Ambassador, I know we haven't been friends for long, but I've come to respect your species. I don't want to watch you be destroyed. Please let the Council mediate. We can negotiate a settlement. The Krell will accept reasonable terms now that you've bloodied their nose. Chen gestured for Thexol to sit. Counselor, can I ask you something? Why does the Council let the Krell behave the way they do? Thexol's structure flickered with discomfort. What do you mean? You said they've fought over 200 wars, that they've conquered 6 species. How many of those wars were defensive? How many of those conquests were justified? The Krell are aggressive, yes, but they follow the rules. They don't commit genocide. They don't destroy planets. They're harsh but not cruel. Not cruel, Chen repeated slowly. Counselor, I've been reading about the Krell's history. The 6 species they conquered, those species no longer have independent governments. Their cultures are being systematically erased. Their populations are serving as labor for Krell interests. You call that following the rules? It's better than extermination, is it? Or is it just slower? Chen pulled up a display. The Yalith people, conquered 200 years ago. Their population has declined by 40%. Their language is no longer taught in schools. Their historical sites are being demolished for Krell construction projects. In another century, the Yalith will exist only in historical databases. Thexol was quiet for a long moment. What would you have us do? Fight them? The Council isn't a military organization. We're diplomats, mediators. Then you're not a government. You're a debate society that watches as the strong devour the weak. And humanity's solution is to become stronger predators? Chen shook his head. Our solution is to show the predators that some prey bite back. Hard enough that the predators learn to leave everyone alone, by destroying them. If necessary, yes. Thexol stood. Ambassador, I came here hoping to change your mind. I see now that's impossible. I hope when this is over, some humans survive to remember why this was a mistake. After Thexol left, Chen returned to his tactical displays. He didn't enjoy what was coming, but he understood its necessity. Meanwhile, in a secure research facility on the planet Xyler Prime, a team led by an insectoid scholar named Chirex made a discovery that would change the Council's understanding of humanity forever. Chirex had requested access to human historical databases, claiming academic interest in comparative civilizational development. What her team found horrified them. 14,000 wars, Chirex told her research assistant. 14,000 separate armed conflicts over approximately 10,000 years of recorded history. That must be a translation error. I verified it 3 times. And these weren't small skirmishes. They had conflicts that killed millions, tens of millions. One conflict, they called it World War II, resulted in over 70 million deaths. From a global population of only 2 billion, that's impossible. No species could survive that level of self-destruction. They did more than survive. They thrived. Look at this. Chirex displayed a graph. After every major conflict, there's a spike in technological advancement. After World War II, they went from basic aviation to landing on their moon in 24 years. War drove their innovation. Not just innovation. Their entire industrial capacity, their research institutions, their educational systems, all of it evolved to support warfare. They developed weapons to destroy their entire planet. Multiple ways to do it. They came within minutes of actually doing it several times. The assistant's antenna quivered with distress. What kind of death world produces a species like this? Chirex pulled up Earth's planetary data. Gravity 1.3 times standard. Extreme weather variations. Tectonic instability. Massive predators that hunted their ancestors. Diseases that regularly culled their populations. They didn't just survive on a death world. They conquered it. They turned every threat into a tool or a weapon. Should we inform the Council? Immediately. They need to understand what humanity represents. The emergency council session was crowded. Chirex presented her findings to a silent chamber. Humanity evolved under conditions that would have destroyed most species, she explained. Every other council species evolved in environments that encourage cooperation. We work together to survive. Humans are different. They evolved to compete, to fight, to outlast. You're saying they're naturally violent? Counselor Madara asked. I'm saying violence is a fundamental part of their species' identity, but that's not the terrifying part. The terrifying part is how good they got at it. They studied warfare the way we study physics or medicine. They wrote books about it. They developed theories, strategies, entire philosophies centered on combat. They have a text called The Art of War that's over 2,000 years old and still studied in their military academies. What else did you learn? Thexal asked quietly. They have concepts we don't even have words for. Totalvar, scorched earth, mutually assured destruction. They developed the capacity to end themselves and then built entire political structures to prevent that outcome. They lived for decades knowing that at any moment someone might push a button and destroy everything. And they survived it. How? Someone asked. By being willing to do it, by making the threat so terrifying that no one dared act. They called it deterrence. They survived by perfecting the art of credible threats. The chamber absorbed this information in shocked silence. Chirex continued. There's one more thing. In all their thousands of wars, they developed rules, conventions about warfare, protection for prisoners, for civilians, for wounded enemies. They committed atrocities, yes, but they also created laws to prevent them. They're not monsters. They're a species that learned to master their own violent nature. And now they're taking that nature into space, Madara said. Yes. At that moment, alerts flashed across multiple displays. The human fleet had reached Krell space. The tactical feed showed the Krell extinction fleet arranged in a defensive sphere around their homeworld. 2,000 ships against 200. The mathematics seemed impossible. Then the humans attacked. But they didn't attack the way the Council expected. They didn't charge forward or exchange long-range fire. Instead, they deployed tactics the galaxy had never seen. Small human craft, too small to be proper warships, launched from the main fleet. They screamed toward Krell vessels at impossible speeds. Boarding craft. The humans were attempting ship-to-ship boarding actions. That's insane, Thexal whispered. Space combat happens at range. No one boards enemy vessels. The risk is absurd, but the humans did it anyway. Their marines cut through Krell hulls, fought in corridors, and captured ships from within. The Krell, trained for ship-to-ship combat, had no doctrine for repelling boarders. Simultaneously, human ships broadcast on every frequency. Not surrender demands. Psychological warfare. Recordings of the new prosperity battle. Casualty reports. Images of destroyed Krell ships. A message. This is what happened to your 7th Fleet. You're next. Krell crews, trained for ritualized combat, began to panic. Then the humans deployed weapons that targeted infrastructure. Not just ships, but the orbital stations, the satellite networks, the communication arrays that allowed the Krell fleet to coordinate. And strangest of all, Krell ships began attacking each other. What's happening? Madara demanded. Chirex studied the data. Cyber warfare. The humans are hacking Krell systems and turning their ships into weapons against their own fleet. They're not just fighting the Krell, they're using the Krell against themselves. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the extinction fleet had lost 1,400 ships. The Krell homeworld's orbital infrastructure was in ruins. The humans had lost 23 vessels. The Krell Supreme Council gathered in their ancient war chamber deep beneath their homeworld's surface. 23 leaders of the Dominion, representing centuries of military tradition and pride. Above them, in orbit, the scattered remains of their extinction fleet tried to regroup. Supreme Commander Vrax stood before them, his exoskeleton still bearing scorch marks from his escape at New Prosperity. The humans demand unconditional surrender, he said, his voice heavy with shame. Complete disarmament. Occupation of our territory. Submission to their authority. The eldest member of the council, War Matriarch Zelana, rose slowly. Her exoskeleton bore the marks of a dozen campaigns. The Krell do not surrender. Not in 3,000 years. Not now. Then what do you propose? Another counselor asked. Our fleet is destroyed. They can bombard our world from orbit with impunity. Let them try. We have the planetary defense grid. Shields that can withstand anything. Let them break themselves against our defenses while we rebuild our forces. Vrax wanted to object, to tell them what he'd seen at New Prosperity, the casual efficiency with which humans destroyed everything in their path. But pride and tradition were powerful forces. The council voted. 15-8 they chose defiance. On Concordia Prime, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Councillor Thexol had barely recharged his energy reserves in 3 days. He felt exhausted in a way his crystalline physiology rarely experienced. Ambassador Chen entered the chamber, and every being present turned to look at him. The High Mediator, Councillor Madara, spoke first. Ambassador Chen, the Council formally requests that humanity accept mediation in this conflict. We can negotiate a settlement that satisfies all parties. The Krell have refused to surrender, Chen said simply. Then give them more time. Pride is a powerful force. They need time to accept their situation. How much time, Counselor? Days, weeks. While they rebuild their forces and prepare for another attack. Thexol stood. Ambassador, please. You've proven your point. The entire galaxy now knows humanity is formidable. You don't need to destroy the Krell homeworld to make that clear. Chen looked at his friend. Counselor, they threatened to exterminate a human colony. 8 million people. They came to our world with overwhelming force, expecting us to bow. We gave them every chance to stop. Every opportunity to negotiate. They chose war, twice, and you've beaten them. Decisively. Show mercy now. Show the galaxy that humanity is capable of restraint. We are showing restraint. We gave them 24 hours. We offered them surrender terms. That's more mercy than they offered us. Another counselor, a vapor-based being whose name Chen could never properly pronounce, spoke through its translator. If you destroy their homeworld, you'll be no better than the worst species in galactic history. You'll be conquerors, exterminators. No, Chen said quietly. We'll be survivors who refuse to let threats go unanswered. There's a difference. The 24 hours expired. Admiral Okonkwo, commanding the human fleet from orbit around the Krell homeworld, sent one final transmission. Krell Supreme Council, this is your final warning. Surrender now or face the consequences. You have 1 hour to respond. The response came from War Matriarch Zelana herself. Humanity. We are Krell. We do not bow to threats. We do not surrender to upstart species. Come then. Attack our world. You will find that occupying a planet is far different from destroying ships in space. You will break against our defenses and the galaxy will learn that the Krell cannot be conquered. Okonkwo closed her eyes. She'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. She keyed her tactical channel. Deploy the SPM. Authorization Okonkwo Alpha 7. In the fleet's science vessel, a device the size of a small shuttle launched toward the Krell homeworld. It didn't look like a weapon. It looked like a satellite, covered in sensor arrays and communication dishes. The Krell defense grid locked onto it immediately. Energy beams lanced out, destroying the device before it could reach the planet. The Krell celebrated. They'd stopped the human attack. Proof that their defenses worked. Then the readings started to change. On the Krell homeworld surface, scientists noticed the anomaly first. The planet's magnetic field was fluctuating. Severely. Sections were weakening while others intensified chaotically. What's happening? Zelana demanded from the war chamber. Unknown, War Matriarch. The magnetic field is destabilizing. It's as if something is interfering with the planetary core's dynamo. Can you stop it? We don't know what's causing it. The device the humans deployed, we destroyed it before it reached the planet. It couldn't have done this, but it had. The device didn't need to survive. It only needed to emit a precise sequence of gravitational pulses before being destroyed. Those pulses penetrated the planet's crust and created resonance patterns in the molten core. Tiny changes, but amplifying, growing, destabilizing. Within 3 hours, the Krell homeworld's magnetic field was failing. War Matriarch. The science officer's voice was shaking. Without the magnetic field, solar radiation will sterilize the surface. All life will die within days, weeks at most. Zelana stared at the data in disbelief. How? We destroyed their weapon. It wasn't a weapon of destruction. It was a tool. It manipulated natural planetary processes. They turned our own world against us. In orbit, Admiral Okonkwo received the readings. The strategic planet modifier was working exactly as designed. A weapon that didn't destroy but made planets temporarily uninhabitable. Reversible if stopped in time. a tool of last resort. She opened a channel to the surface. Krell's Supreme Council, you now understand the situation. Your magnetic field is collapsing. In approximately 6 hours, the surface will become uninhabitable. We can reverse the process, but only if you surrender immediately. Unconditionally. Vrax watched Zelana's expression cycle through disbelief, hate, and finally something he'd never seen in a Krell leader before. Fear. They can do this? She whispered. Destroy a world without firing a single weapon at it? They're humans, Vrax said quietly. They developed dozens of ways to destroy their own planet. They know how planets work, how they die. They studied it because they were afraid they might do it to themselves accidentally. What are they? Survivors. Counselor Thexall was right. They're a species that learned to master the art of extinction and then chose not to use it on themselves. But they kept the knowledge. Just in case. Zelana looked at the tactical displays. Her fleet destroyed. Her world dying. Her pride and tradition meaningless against an enemy that fought like no one in galactic history. Signal the humans. We surrender. The transmission reached Admiral Okonkwo 30 seconds later. She immediately ordered the SPM's reversal sequence activated. A second device launched, this one designed to stabilize the planetary core's magnetic field. It would take days to fully restore, but the killing radiation would be halted. All ships prepare for humanitarian operations. Medical teams to the surface. Begin evacuation of critical areas. Priority to children and the elderly. Her executive officer looked surprised. Admiral, they're our enemies. They were our enemies. Now they're refugees who need help. We're not here to commit genocide. We're here to win a war. We won. Now we help them survive. On Concordia Prime, the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as human ships began evacuating Krell civilians to temporary shelters on the homeworld's moons. Medical teams provided treatment. Engineers worked alongside Krell technicians to accelerate the magnetic field restoration. They're helping them, Thexall said, his voice filled with wonder. After everything, they're helping them. Ambassador Chen stood at the central podium. The war is over. The Krell have surrendered unconditionally. Humanity accepts their surrender and will begin the occupation and disarmament process. We will also provide humanitarian assistance during the recovery period. Counselor Madara leaned forward. Ambassador, humanity has demonstrated unprecedented military capability. You destroyed the Krell Dominion in less than a week. You deployed weapons we didn't know existed. And now the Council must address the obvious question. What do we do about humanity? What do you mean? You're dangerous. Perhaps the most dangerous species in galactic history. You've proven you can destroy any military force. You can render planets uninhabitable. You fight with a level of ruthlessness that terrifies us. How can the Council coexist with a species like yours? Chen looked around the chamber. Counselor, I understand your fear. We are dangerous. We won't deny that. But being dangerous and being a threat are not the same thing. Explain. Humanity has the capacity for tremendous violence. We proved that. But we also have the capacity for tremendous compassion. We're saving the Krell even though they tried to exterminate our colony. We gave them every chance to avoid war. We only fought when attacked. We only escalated when they refused reasonable terms. And when they surrendered, we immediately stopped and began helping them. That's not the behavior of monsters. That's the behavior of people who understand the cost of war and hate it. Then what do you want? Thexall asked. What we've always wanted. Peace, trade, friendship. To learn from you and to teach you in return. But we also want safety, security. The knowledge that no species will threaten human lives without consequences. And if a species does threaten you, Chen's expression hardened. The trial began 3 weeks after the Krell surrender. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber had been reconfigured into something resembling a courtroom. 47 species sat in judgment. Humanity stood accused. The charges scrolled across translators in dozens of languages. Excessive use of force, violation of warfare conventions, deployment of planet-killing weapons, refusal to accept mediation, and conduct unbecoming a council member species. Ambassador Chen Wei stood alone at the defendant's podium. He'd refused legal representation, insisting he could speak for humanity himself. Counselor Madara, serving as chief adjudicator, began the proceedings. Ambassador Chen, you have heard the charges. How does humanity respond? Not guilty to all charges, Chen said calmly. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Ambassador, the evidence is not in dispute. Your military forces destroyed over 1,700 Krell vessels. You deployed a weapon that rendered a planet temporarily uninhabitable. These facts are recorded and verified. How can you claim innocence? Chen looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many beings as his human physiology allowed, because the charges assume that galactic law applies to a war we didn't start, couldn't avoid, and ended as mercifully as possible. I reject that assumption. You reject council authority? Madara's voice carried warning. No, I reject the idea that defending ourselves from annihilation is a crime. A counselor from the Drevix Empire spoke up, but the level of violence was unnecessary. You could have achieved victory with far fewer casualties. Chen turned to face the speaker. Counselor Drevix, your species has been a council member for 4,000 years. In that time, you've been at war twice, correct? That's correct. Both wars lasted over a decade each. Combined casualties approximately 50,000 beings. Both ended in negotiated settlements that left the underlying territorial disputes unresolved. Is that accurate? The Drevix preferred diplomatic solutions. And 20 years after your second war ended, your opponent violated the treaty and seized 3 border systems, which led to your third war, currently in year 7 with no end in sight. Is that also accurate? The Drevix counselor's bioluminescent patterns flickered with discomfort. Our conflicts are complex. They're endless, Chen said bluntly. You fight wars that don't end. You negotiate settlements that don't last. You follow rules that protect everyone's pride but solve nothing. The Krell conquered 6 species under your watch. How many times did the Council intervene? How many sanctions were imposed? How many times did you enforce your own laws? Silence. Chen continued. The Krell threatened to exterminate 8 million human colonists. They came with overwhelming force, expecting us to surrender our rights because they were stronger. We gave them the chance to withdraw. They refused. We gave them the chance to surrender after we destroyed their first fleet. They refused. We gave them 24 hours to surrender before we threatened their homeworld. They refused. At every step, we offered them a way out. They chose escalation every time. But your methods, another counselor protested. Planet-killing weapons? Cyber warfare? Boarding actions? These tactics are barbaric. They're effective. The war lasted 1 week. Total casualties across both sides. Approximately 40,000 beings, mostly military personnel. In 1 week, we resolved a conflict that under your rules would have dragged on for years, killing tens of thousands more, and resolving nothing. Counselor Thexal stood. His crystalline structure had regained its usual luster after days of recharging and contemplation. Ambassador Chen, may I speak? Of course, Counselor. I've spent the last 3 weeks studying your species' history in detail. I've read about your wars, your weapons, your capacity for violence. And I've also read about something else, your laws, your conventions. Even in your darkest wars, you developed rules to protect prisoners, to safeguard civilians, to limit suffering where possible. Chen nodded. The Geneva Conventions. The laws of war, yes. You broke your own rules sometimes. You committed atrocities, but you also prosecuted your own people for those crimes. You held yourselves accountable. We tried to, yes. And in your conflict with the Krell, did you violate those principles? Chen thought carefully before answering. We pushed to the absolute edge of what our laws allow. We used overwhelming force. We deployed weapons designed for planetary scale effects. But we also gave repeated opportunities for surrender. We provided humanitarian aid immediately after victory. We treated wounded Krell with the same medical care we gave our own. And we're working now to restore their government and culture, not to erase it. Thexal's structure pulsed. This is what I've been trying to explain to the Council. Humanity isn't a species of monsters. They're a species that learned to master their own monstrous capabilities and then built laws and ethics to constrain them. They're not perfect at it, but they try. They're still too dangerous, the Drevix counselor insisted. They have weapons that can destroy civilizations. So do you, Chen pointed out. Every spacefaring species has the capacity to destroy planets. You could deploy kinetic weapons, drop asteroids, poison atmospheres. The difference is that humans openly acknowledge this capability and build our entire military doctrine around it. We don't pretend war is a game. We don't pretend violence can be made civilized. We accept its horror and try to make it end as quickly as possible. Madara raised a crystalline appendage for silence. Ambassador Chen, Even if we accept your arguments about self-defense and proportionality, there remains the fundamental question. How can the Council coexist with a species that treats warfare so differently from everyone else? By recognizing that different approaches might have value, Chen replied. Your way has maintained stability for 6,000 years. I respect that. But it's also allowed aggressive species like the Krell to dominate weaker ones, because everyone knows the consequences of fighting back are limited. There's no real deterrent. And you propose to be that deterrent, if necessary? Counselor, humanity didn't come to the stars looking for war. We came looking for peace, for knowledge, for friends. But we won't be victims. Any species that threatens human lives will face consequences. Real consequences. Not diplomatic protests or economic sanctions that everyone ignores. Actual, immediate, overwhelming military response. That's tyranny, someone shouted. No, Chen said firmly. Tyranny is imposing your will on others without justification. Defense is responding to aggression. If the Council can't tell the difference, then the Council has a bigger problem than humanity. Madara let the chamber's noise subside before speaking again. The Council will deliberate. Ambassador Chen, you are dismissed. The deliberations lasted 2 days. Chen spent the time walking the gardens of Concordia Prime, wondering if he'd just ended humanity's place in galactic civilization. On the second evening, Thexal found him sitting by an artificial waterfall, watching light refract through the mist. The Council has reached a verdict, Thexal said softly. And you're not expelled. But there are conditions. Chen waited. Humanity will serve as the Council's enforcement arm. When diplomatic solutions fail, when species violate Council law, human forces may be deployed to restore order. You'll have representation on a newly formed Security Council, but in exchange, no human military vessels within 5 parsecs of core Council worlds without explicit permission. Regular inspections of human military capabilities by a joint oversight committee, and human commanders will be required to justify any use of force above minimal thresholds. Chen absorbed this. We're being made into the Council's police force. You're being recognized for what you are, the only species in the galaxy willing and able to enforce consequences for aggression. The Council needs that. We've needed it for centuries, but we're too proud to admit it. And the Krell? The Dominion will be dismantled. The 6 conquered species will regain independence with Council support. Krell worlds will be placed under joint Human Council administration for 1 generation. After that, they'll be granted self-governance again, but with permanent restrictions on military force projection. They'll resent that? Perhaps. Or perhaps they'll be relieved. Frax contacted me yesterday. He said something interesting. He said that the Krell have been slaves to their own military reputation for so long that they'd forgotten how to be anything else. Defeat freed them to become something new. Chen considered this. And if other species test the new arrangement? If someone decides to challenge human authority, then they'll learn the same lesson the Krell learned. But Ambassador, I've seen your species' capacity for both war and peace. I trust that you'll use violence only when necessary. I hope you're right. Counselor, so do I. Because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate. 5 years later, Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the same spot by the artificial waterfall. The galaxy had changed. 3 aggressive species had tested the new order. The Zarvox hierarchy threatened a weaker neighbor, expecting traditional council in action. Instead, they received a visit from a human diplomatic ship backed by a battle group. The Zarvox backed down without shots fired. The Kreenoth Collective attempted to seize resource-rich systems claimed by the peaceful Yalith people. Former Krell subjects still recovering from centuries of subjugation, human forces interdicted the invasion fleet.